heavens, you're welcome to do so.
Okay.
You can see that map that I put up in the text for like bullshit channel, right?
Yes.
Okay, I will get
Okay.
that. I will get to that in a minute after you give me your hit me with your heavens montage.
Okay. Heavens montage. Whoa, let there be light. Uh, okay, so let me just keep that open for a second. I just want to get this open.
And
And let me
I'm
pull.
super stuffed up right now too, so I probably
Yeah,
sound like shit, but my nose
no,
is just
no,
plugged
no
up.
problem. Let me pull out my rocky montage of notes about the heavens. So do you want me to do the past expose style, like I just state everything that happened?
Yeah, you can
Or
do that for sure.
okay,
Yeah.
I give it. Um, okay, so let me get out.
I will pick up a little bit out from when you get cast out of your divine domain.
Yeah. Planes. All right. Yeah, let me just pull out the upper plains map so I can actually see this. That's a terrible picture. I have a better picture elsewhere. Where is it? Okay. No, it'd be my D&D manual here. The D&D manuals. No. Story collection. There we go. Planar cosmology. All right. Now we're talking. Rolling balls deep in the lore here. All right, so it would be Mount Celestia. Okay, so Mount, just so I can get a bit of context for myself.
Sure.
Okay, so upon the slopes of Mount Celestia in the upper plains, a part of the astral dominion that remains within the host of the elves or angels. Blah. Close enough. They're all sexy
some
people.
some angels are elves, not all elves are
Yeah,
angel. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's some orcs up here with wings.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
we don't discriminate.
yeah.
Um, so within the upper plains, there hosts the three different kinds of devas. There are. Let me pull that up. I should have gotten this all pulled up beforehand.
Yeah, it's all good.
Da-da. No, it's different planar cosmology. There we go. Da-da. Hemdriel, fallen angel. All right, origins and the angelic. There we go. Now we're talking. Okay, so Hemdriel origins. All right, so upon the slopes of Mount Celestio rest the three orders of the Deva, but the monovanik devas, the monadic devas, and the astral devas. Each are governed with the task of protecting a realm of existence, of which they do so and follow the tenets of their domain to keep order and spread good throughout the realm and encourage it, versus the forces that reside in the lower planes. Upon which the Monavic or I gotta get these right. It's killing me.
Tell me,
Uh,
well, what is the job of the monavanic, the monavanic
the Mon the
tier?
Monavan
Yeah.
the Monavanic tier of the Devas is considered by most to be the most privileged and worldly of the Devas. They oversee the prime material plane, the negative plane of energy, and the positive plane of energy. And they govern it and work through it to establish the parameters of their domain.
And the monadic.
The monadic devas, they watch over the ethereal and elemental planes, acting as mediators between the primordials and the elemental forces residing there, all the while hunting down evil planar creatures and fiendish influences.
And the chorus of astral angels.
And the astral devas are the most commonly known to be the primary battle forces going into the lower planes to be able to combat the forces of evil where they live and try to defeat the forces of evil.
Gotcha.
And it is here that we start with a particular of the Monavic divas, a diva known as Hemdriel.
The monovantic or the monadic?
The
The mo
the
Okay,
Mavonatic.
the most
Or,
privileged of
yeah,
angels. Okay.
the ones that dealt with the material.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
the ones that dealt with the material plane.
Cool.
And it is upon the material plane in particular.
To be fair, they
That,
could have like made those two tiers less similar.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we're dealing with celestials. They don't get
Yeah.
stuff wrong
It's
like this.
probably like has Latin roots and shit too. So what who are we but mere mortals?
I'm going to start speaking in Nokian during this campaign. Be
Yeah.
prepared, people.
All right.
uh, um, but either way, so Hemdriel was sent on several missions over the course of her lengthy lifespan, of which I'm not going to even state how old she actually is,
Okay.
because it's irrelevant to the story. And during her mission, she was meant to enforce the domains in which she was particularly tasked and were very well suited for her. And where is that now? Did I just exit it? Yeah, I exited it like a derp.
So did she do most of her stuff on the prime material plane, the negative energy
Yes,
plane, or the positive energy plane?
the prime material
Prime
plane.
material plane. Okay.
And
What
and
what do
as
you think that her most like memorable or defining mission for her was as a diva or an angel or a member of this divine choir or chorus
yeah.
of
um
celestials?
So, under the choir chorus of angels, she was particularly tasked with the punishment of wrongdoers, the furthering of good and law, duty, loyalty, and righteousness. And she was particularly tasked with the punishment of wrongdoers. So, during this, a cleric of Torn, along with his adventuring party, had gone into conflict with a being that was of to be punished of wrongdoing. And this cleric petitioned the god, and the god answered, summoning Hemdriel down in order to aid in their plight.
So you were
And it was,
you were actually summoned down to the prime material plane by a cleric of Torm.
yes.
Okay, cool.
And it was during this that she did the best of her ability to fight against this terrible foe. But during the course of the fight, it did not go as expected. The heroes fought valiantly but perished ultimately at the hand of this terrible foe. But despite their death and her attempting to keep them from death, she struggled on in an attempt to fulfill her task, as was a part of her charge. But unable to best the being in combat, she was planar bound and imprisoned in the custody of this entity. And unusually, as would be indicative of most evil creatures, this entity was not interested in malicious intent, so much was interested in talking and getting Hemdriel to understand. And Hemdriel, despite her faculties being among her and having a lengthy period of time, did not glean that this being was evil.
So he basically duped her.
We don't know. She doesn't know. But because she did not sense he was evil, but perhaps misunderstood, she listened and learned about the circumstances behind the battle. And over the long talks, Hemdriel's viewpoint towards what had happened changed. She learned of many things, and ultimately, this caused her faith in what she was tasked to do to be shaken. And for an angel, especially of duty, loyalty, this was a monumental change. It it fundamentally shook her at her core.
Sure.
And despite having that duty instead, she expected to be just held in place and something nefarious was to happen. But no, after she had understood, he let her go. And instead of now being at full strength and trying to best this enemy and potentially die in the process, she decided to return to the upper plane instead, leaving him. Upon returning to the outer plane, the other angels felt something was wrong with her. Yet most didn't mind it, and Hemdriel was nonetheless sent on another task with another deva known as Timalakos. And they were tasked to mete out justice. And on this mission, she met another being, not of the same, this just a lowly mortal. And they were tasked to deal the punishment to this wrongdoer. And she could not bring herself to fulfill that task. And when Timalakos pushed the issue, she instead defended the person against her fellow angel. And this proceeded to have a battle between the two, and during which both were greatly injured, eventually caused them to retreat to the upper plane. And when this happened, angels fighting angels is a serious offense among the upper planes, and even rarer among those of the good and lawful. And thus they were brought to the Solar, named Celestial Arbiter Semalian, and he judged what went on between the two of them, ultimately finding that Hemdriel was righteous and good in her intentions, but was contempt of the law and the order and the duty, and ultimately did not fulfill the punishment, being deemed disloyal. And then among his powers, he asked her to confirm her oath to what she was sworn in to do. And she became outraged at the accusation that she was not fulfilling what she was meant to do, and also generally dismayed that she would even have to swear such a thing in when it was at the core of her being. Outraged, she, in her lack of wisdom, struck out at the Celestial and was met with grim force. And this had cemented Semalian's judgment. Semalian then judged her unfit for her duties and stripped her of her divinity and higher knowledges. He exiled her to the material plane to seek penance. However, she would be given a chance to reclaim her being. And thus she fell from the heavens, her halo falling down and clasping around her neck. And she fell screaming and burning in anger. And that is where we start off with you.
And as you stood in the celestial court, Hemdriel, and Somalian cast you out of his divine graces and the divine graces of all your fellow devas and angels. Upon casting you out of the holy temple of judgment in the heavens above, your body struck one of the tall white marble pillars in the chamber of judgment, and the force of him casting you out caused the pillar to crack and break, and a single shard of the white pillar of divinity from your homeland adhered to the halo as it fell around your neck into a silver chain. And as you plummeted to the prime material planes, landing with such force to create a massive crater. Um, you awaken, not broken physically, but certainly broken emotionally. And it is the first thing you see when you wake up. Uh, but the white shard of the marble pillar back from where you were cast has now darkened to an abysmal black shard of stone, hanging like a piece of obsidian around this silver chain that is currently tightly, almost choking your neck.
and and she begins to think, and she tries to fly, and she feels nothing,
Correct.
and she reaches back and touches the back of her shoulder and feels nothing but flesh, and feeling the collar choking her, it dawns on her that she's no longer an angel, and she begins to panic, and she tries to recall everything that happened, and she just gets flashes of a great face in judgment, sadness, and loss, and she just breaks down in tears screaming.
Yes, and you fall to your knees in this um, crater that you've created on your fall from the heavens. And as you are crying tears into your hands, um, you quickly realize you look down at your naked form, and um, suddenly you feel something that you probably have never felt in your entire life, and that is cold, because a blistering windstorm, a blizzard, is swirling around you, and you begin
And
to shudder, and the the tears are the only warmth that are currently creating any sort of hopefulness. And you look around you, and all you see is a cast of white falling down around you, and
and
the true
and
hopelessness of your situation sinks deep into your heart.
yeah, her already trembling hands from her sadness and anger are now trembling even further as it's starting to creep down her form. Her back starts to shudder, her knees start to buckle, and she no longer feels powerful. She feels pathetic.
And as you lie there feeling pathetic, um, in the center of this crater, as it begins to fill with snow around you, and your extremities, your fingertips and your toes begin to grow cold, um, you hear in the distance these low rumbling growls. They sound like growls at first, but as they get closer and closer, they begin to sound uh, more like voices. And you see one, two, three, five large figures moving through the shadows of these large figures, moving through the snow, uh, with what looks to be a large sled being pulled behind them. And as they get closer and closer, a word comes to your mind. Communication up in the heavens was a bit different. Down here in the material plane, they speak the common tongue, and this word forms in your mind, bear. And these are a band of 5 bear folk. And as you're kneeling, sitting in this large crater high in the mountains of the Northlands, far beyond the spine of the world, um, the cold kind of takes you and you pass out. And you awaken on the back of this sled. You don't know how much time has passed, but the snow has died down a little bit. Your eyes flutter open, and you are wrapped in a thick, warm woolen blanket. You see a bright blue uh, um, kind of interior of this painted sled that you've been laid upon. And as you look up, this large figure turns and looks down upon you. He has a big fuzzy face of brown, fluffy hair, and he grins at you with these sharp, pearly white teeth. You can see that he's wearing a big chain harbrook, and there's a large sword strapped to his back. And the sled passes underneath these two large wooden archways, and there's a um, big wooden wall that kind of envelops past these pines that the sled passes through, and you kind of pass out again, and you find
Um,
yourself in a town called Barristan, and um, past the spine of the world in the tundras of the Northlands, the wild lands that few from the main part of Faerun ever get to see. Um, and This is actually a town that is a homebrew town. I actually have another. I know you said that you fell in this place called Sosol,
yeah,
which actually is up here in the north. Um,
yeah.
uh,
But
but I
you just
think
placed it in the general vicinity.
in the
Hmm.
vicinity, yeah, and I think this will be actually more interesting for your character. Um, Eventually, you wake up in on a bed in a room. Um, there is a massive stone hearth that's blazing with flame, and you are no longer frozen and cold. You are tucked beneath many layers of heavy blankets, and for a moment, as you awaken again, you almost see your divine home. But as you open your eyes and look around, this is much different. The room is mostly dark. There's a window with these yellow drapes all, near the side of your bed, and as you gaze out of the window, you can see that the bluster of snow has gone away, and there is a black sky filled with these bright points of light, which you would know probably as stars, being that you've been to the prime material plane several times before. But as an angel, you might take those kinds of things for granted. You might have never really realized the full gravity of what that looks like as a divine being. And now, truly feeling what a mortal form feels like, you look out of this window and you see this dark sky spattered with these glowing lights, which very well might be you might have used to be one of.
And and Hemdriel just is looking up at them and is just seething angry. But also she like briefly goes,
There's a strange beauty in it, a grounding
yeah,
beauty in it. Yeah.
and
Um,
she's under the blankets and she's like she's actually not used to having clothing. Like she used to just like wear like
sure.
minimal when
Yeah.
she went.
So
So
you are
she's
actually
like,
yeah, you're under all the blankets, and you are actually now in like a very warm woolen gray robe
yeah,
as well.
she
Yeah.
she likes the warmth, but she feels all the fibers touching her skin, and it just feels itchy.
Yeah.
She just like, oh, what is this uncomfortable sensation? It's so happy. Oh,
Yeah.
and she's like tossing and turning, trying to like get more comfortable
Yeah.
or whatever around her.
As you're trying to discern these new senses of all these things around you, you kind of get this waft of a scent, and you can actually smell like this freshly cooked bread and meat. And you look over to where the scent is coming from, and there's this food that looks like it's probably been recently placed there. And there's still like a little bit of steam coming off the meat that you can see uh, um, cast off the firelight in your room. And there's a small wooden table that looks like it's made of some sort of dark wood, offset by two chairs. And there's this plate of food and a silver jug probably containing water, in the corner of the room, and suddenly you feel just famished. You've never
Yeah.
probably felt hunger before.
No, no.
Another
She she
brand new sensation. Yes.
she feels a burning sensation in the middle of her like body, and she's like, oh, and she thinks that she's been stabbed. So she looks down. There's no wound, and then she feels like the rumble of a stomach,
And then your
and it
mouth
like
just starts
curls up,
like salivating,
and she's like,
almost. Yes.
oh, and she's never known hunger, so she's just like, what the hell is this? And so like instinctively she'll get up, pull over the covers, and like just walk over straight to the food and just start eating it standing up,
Yeah.
not not even bothering to use utensils
There
because
are
why bother?
utensils, yeah, but you're not
Yeah,
using.
yeah.
You're definitely not using utensils.
she
Yeah.
she she tries to cast something and it doesn't happen,
Yeah.
and she's like,
Um,
and she and she keeps trying to cast it, but it's not happening. So
it's like
she,
it's actually like a whole like chicken, like it's a roasted chicken. It's like a whole
yeah,
roasted chicken, and there's a loaf of bread that's like warm and soft. There's a little cup of like melted butter next to it in a little saucer. Um,
um, she would like to make an insight check on the food, just because like she's probably never eaten chicken before, so she's probably seen it but never tasted. So she's trying to think about whether she can even eat that. Um, so okay, so she's probably seen other people eat it, and she's like, okay, and she's like going to disdainfully reach her hand down and try to pick it up,
yeah.
and
Well,
and as she does,
you're just instinctively drawn to it. It's
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
She's bare, and she's trying to pick it up, and then she realizes that it's actually a bit difficult to lift up this chicken. She's like, she looks at her arms, and
Yeah.
she's like, they don't look different, but she's recalling her strength from earlier, and she's noticing a significant difference, and so she like sort of like weak hands it over and drops it
Well,
down the plate again.
I think you probably actually do look a lot different now. Like I think you've been cast into a human form. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not like you were like a deva or an angel anymore.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
you are probably significantly smaller, significantly thinner, uh, um, and
I
and
well,
you're like in a
ironic,
human body
yeah.
now.
Ironically, she is actually still the same height as
Oh,
she
okay,
was.
sure, yeah,
Because the Devas of this are like 6 foot something, so
yeah, gotcha.
and they're lithe already, and they're practically the same size as humans. It's just they have the wings
Yeah,
and
yeah.
the strength and all that, and she's lacking a lot of it. So instead, seeing as how it's annoying to actually pick up the chicken, she's gonna like reach over and like just like try to tear a little piece off and eat it. And as that happens, she begins to get faster and
Yeah,
faster with
yeah.
it
And there's
until
just
she's
like
in.
juice dripping down. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and she knows this flavor. She's like, yeah, this is good food.
Well, as you're like ravenously consuming this food that's been recently left for you, there's like a heavy knock on the door.
And she looks around and she's like, what? Uh,
And you hear actually a familiar deep voice just say beyond the thick wooden door, may I enter, please?
yes.
So the door opens inward to your room, and standing in the frame, kind of framed by the light of the fire, you see this massive, hulking figure. Um, you notice now for the first time that the door frames are shaped to be about 9 feet tall, and the room is actually quite large that you're in. Um, and you see the familiar brown fuzzy face that gives you this pearly white grin.
And
His
and
chainmail is kind of gone, and now he's just wearing a kind of like a plain blue linen tunic, kind of, and these brown leather pants. And he smiles as he enters the room, and he says, Ah, good to see that you're awake, child.
And she looks at his beard and she's just like,
It's
ew.
a it's not a beard like he's a bear. He's literally a bear.
Oh, he's literally a
He's
bear. Okay,
literally a bear.
that's a whole different thing. Like,
Yeah. Like he has a
it,
big paunch, he's standing up on his hind legs. He's got these wide dark eyes, and he's literally a bear. He's like a bear folk.
okay.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then she'll have a completely different idea. Because she's like, okay, he's a bear.
Yeah.
That's an animal. Okay, and so she's like, what was the last thing he said to her?
It's good to see you're awake, child.
Mm. And she like nods and is just like sort of somber about her predicament.
He says, the circumstances of which we found you was quite unusual. Do you know where you are?
And she would actually like to make an intelligence check to find out if she knows where she is.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Um,
She makes an estimate of it.
I, you know that you're in the north of the prime material plane. Yeah.
That's where the most ice is.
Yeah. Um, you know that you're in the north, but you may have never had any contact with the bearfolk before.
Probably not. Mostly just humans.
Yeah. Um, most people don't have much contact with the bearfolk, actually. Um, he says, well, he sees the searching look in your eyes, and he says, well, it's probably clear that you're beyond the spine of the world at this point, but we found you in the
Mm.
tundras, and we brought you in. You are in a town called Barristan. He says, how did you find yourself out in the tundras all alone and quite indecent?
And she and the funny thing is that she's still indecent unless they dressed her.
They put her in
Like,
like a gray woolen robe, yeah.
okay, so
Yeah, yeah,
she's okay. So if that's the case.
yeah,
She's like sort of itching a bit, like,
yeah.
and she's uncomfortable in it. But then he mentions that, and she starts like trailing off, and her eyes glaze over and look in a different direction. And she starts remembering her saying, "Smellian, you do not hold me in contempt." And then like fades back in,
Yeah, yeah.
and she's like, "I was exiled." And then she just gets a much harder face, and she's like, "And I fell."
So he kind of gives you an appraising look. It's hard to tell what an appraising look looks like from a bear folk. Their features are a little harder to read than the normal mortals that you're used to dealing with, but you can tell. Uh, he's certainly interested in you, and he says, so he kind of regards your features, and he says,
Yeah. So
you
so
must
just to
have.
give you,
He says you must have committed quite a crime to be exiled from Sosal.
yeah.
Are
So
you a thief?
so just to give you a visual of what he's looking at, her skin is actually about as white as the snow
Yeah.
that she was found in. Her hair and her eyes are silver, and in general, like, she's a lithe build. She's like 6 foot tall, and she's pretty beautiful.
It's
Like,
it's
as far
quite
as far
clear.
as
It's
from me,
yeah. It's quite
yeah,
it's quite clear that he assumes where you came from. He's
yeah,
more interested in why you were in like a fresh new big crater, but like he's aware of Sosal. He knows that it's across the tundras. So if you look at actually this map that I've posted, this is like a map that I've really actually created
yeah, yeah,
for.
yeah,
So Sosal, it the mountain range that kind of splits the middle of the map. There's a little town resting in the nook of the mountains there. If you look in Discord, in the like
Yeah.
dead
Yeah.
center of the map, basically. Yeah, so that's Barristan, and so Saul is on the top left corner.
Top left corner.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's already that big crater in the tundras there, which is not intentional. Like this was a map I'd made a few weeks ago,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's like a map of the of Faerun above the spine of the world. So like you fell in that big crater, and you probably just made it even worse. And
Yeah. I
they brought you to Barristan in that kind of center region in the mountain range there.
yeah. I sort of carved out that crater, a new hole.
Yeah, for sure. But like the bear folk are aware of the of Sosal, that city up there, and he just assumes that you came from there. But he says, are you a thief? Did you kill someone? What was your sin? Why did they cast you out of the city?
And she begins to trail off again, and her mind goes into fighting with Teklamkos, and she's like, "You shall not kill him. His judgment is not of yours to make." And then she flashes back and is like, "I defended somebody I shouldn't have."
Does she say like out loud in the room, or is like in her mind?
The flashbacks are in her
In her
mind,
mind. Okay, yeah. So
and then she goes like, "I saved somebody I shouldn't have."
um well, you see a kind of a side grin and a few of his pearly white teeth again, and he says, um, "Well, child, I dare to say that there's not a man in the north who's saved somebody he shouldn't have at this point. But you look strong, and you're awake now. We were worried for you there for a moment, but you can stay here if you want. Of course, you'll have to work for your keep. We'll talk about it more in the morning." Um, and
And,
so essentially,
and
you
yeah,
no
yeah.
go ahead. Yeah, go
But
ahead. Yeah.
before he leaves, she'll ask, "What is your name?"
As he turns and he's about to close your door, just like really the only part of him that you can see that hasn't faded away into the shadows is just his face, and his bare snout's kind of there. And um, he says, "They call me Bowden." Um, and then he kind of the latch of your door clicks, and the handle settles into place, and you still have only made it about halfway through your meal. Um, and
So
you probably finish your chicken while gazing out at the stars or something, you know?
yeah, yeah. She proceeds to take these annoying things off of her and throw them down, and then as soon as she does that, the cold creeps back in, and she goes, "Ugh."
Yeah,
And then she goes back to where it was warm, which are the blankets, and then she puts them on, and then realizes they're itchy, and then she tries to flip them inside out, put them on the other way, and the fur is better, but it's still a bit itchy, and
yeah.
she's like, mm.
So
And she like grabs the plate and moves over
you
with it.
learn so this will be now again a little bit of a montage. You learn pretty quickly that Bowden, who is the leader of Barristan, and his bear folk are a pretty jovial, jolly bunch. The town or city here of Barristan is like 98% bear folk. It's all bear folk, and um, there's probably has a population of about, I'd say, 2,000 ish or so, 2,000, 2,500. They live in this tall wooden walled city at the base of these big mountains, and they live a pretty standard life. They're smiths and tavern keeps and anything in a normal town that you can find. And they go into the tundras at times for fishing and food. And along the coastline of the Northlands up here, there are large tribes uh, of essentially Viking culture, kind of fishing, humanoid fishing tribes. and they go out and make trades and deals with them from time to time. Uh, um, but you quickly learn that it's not a bad place to be. The bear folk are happy to have you. You probably make quick friends with Bowden. Um, and although he believes that you were cast out of Sosal, he quickly finds a place for you in the city if you want one. Otherwise, if your character didn't want to stay here, she would be welcome to try and travel like to Sosal or
Um,
somewhere else.
she would probably stay where she's at because she views that the Bearfolk are pretty good people,
Yeah.
and the ones already protected her, so at least she knows she has an ally there, and she also still needs time to process what has happened to her.
So
So she, but
as you remain in Barristan, you learn a little bit about the realities of the North here. You know that there is a great white dragon and a very old white wizard who essentially torment the lands. They use the people and bend and mold them against each other when they can, and they're like kind of one-upsmen. They are like in this struggle for the North against each other, and they're always trying to best each other in weird ways. Like they're both these very old creatures that are like essentially just fucking with the people that try to live normal lives up here in the tundras of the North. And the bears, being in the central part of this territory, usually have to deal with a lot of the consequences of that. So occasionally they'll be assaulted by like a horde of yetis that the dragon has coaxed into like trying to go murder people, relentlessly and stuff like that. So you quickly form like a battle bond as well with the bear folk. You guys get
oh
into
yeah,
some very pinched and heated battles together as you help them defend their town.
she,
And
she's in general very pissed off to hear that there's creatures manipulating what's going on out here.
yes, yes.
She's like, I will definitely kill anything that will try to harm you guys.
But they also, everyone in Barristan also kind of has a trade, whether they apply it that often or not as well. Like everyone kind of can do something, and so they try the Bears of Barristan try to figure out what it is that you're good at. So what kind of trade do you think that Hemdriel would end up developing?
Uh,
Because they like whether you're good like they you have to pick something or else get out, it's like
yeah, that's gonna be the difficult part because she's not that skilled at many trades.
yeah. Well, they'll
She
so essentially at the end of this kind of montage here, like 4 years are going to pass, so you'll develop one and you'll get a skill proficiency from that. So
yeah, we'll have to discuss that
yeah.
because she's not very good at
But
many
it'll likely either be mining, smithing, tailoring, or like leatherworking. It'll be one of those four basically. Something useful in the north.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and it's during this time that could I say that she picks up a instrument, or
Absolutely,
do they?
yeah. No, the
Yeah,
bear folk are like very musical. They love to sing. They love to play instruments. Their instruments are all a bit bigger than what you might use. A little like they're kind of oversized, But yeah, but
um,
they would make you one that would fit your size, and yeah, you could pick up a musical skill as well for sure.
no. She notices one of the instruments, and it resembles one that she had when she was up in the outer planes. And she picks up the lyre, and she picks up and starts playing that, and she's actually pretty proficient with it. So
Nice.
she joins
Yeah.
along in their
There are
tunes.
many jolly nights around big bonfires in Barristan, with you on the lyre and Bowden singing in his deep melodic voice, and many of the bear folk joining in with their various instruments and song as well. And as you spend a few years pass by, I'd say 2 years pass by, and after these 2 years, You keep the same room of the first one you ever woke up in, which is actually a part of Bowden's keep, off in one of the corners. And You're sitting in your bed one night with a big fire going in the hearth, and it's another clear night like the first night that you woke up here, and you look down and you notice how much the chain around your neck has loosened, and the dark shard around your neck has gone from a deep black to a light gray. And you take a deep breath, and even though you have a big hearth going, you're not under the blankets, and there's still a bit of a chill at your back, coming from where the window is, and you think about, you never really realized how minuscule and small a human life is. You always thought in these large concepts of judgment, and time never really meant anything. And down here, the days to you seem like eternity sometimes. But you look down and you realize that the chain of your necklace has expanded, and the stone has turned from a black to a gray, and you feel good. You feel good about yourself.
Yeah, she even begins to now understand why some mortals act out in horrible ways because clothing is uncomfortable and cold sucks
uh,
and cold feet suck.
Absolutely.
And why do shoes exist? But without them, you'd have to touch the cold
Yep,
ground.
yeah, you'd be fucking
And she's
frozen
like,
and dead. Yeah.
and travel takes forever
Yep.
because I could
Um,
just fly before. So,
and,
so she's
and
beginning to. She now sympathizes with some of the woes of.
yes, mortality. Yes, and another year goes by, and after another year goes by, the inhabitants of Barristan start to get a little excited. There's a little buzz in town. Um, an event that happens every 4 years, a festival that kind of happens throughout the realm, but the main portion of it takes place in the Sword Coast and in Neverwinter. It's called Shield Meet. Happens every 4 years, and it's a jovial festival, meeting of people across the realms all come to meet and enjoy and negotiate new trades, and um, let go of their uh, uh, um, uh, what's the word? Their uh,
Inhibitions.
inhibitions, but also their fuck, man, uh, their biases, and they
Bridge cultural gaps.
yes, bridge cultural gaps, and the bear folk of Bearston are no different. They are planning a trip to the Sword Coast, sailing through the dangerous ice-capped peaks of the seas and down into the warmer regions of the world for shield meet. And not only a few members get to go from the tribe every year. There's like a raffle. Bowden leads the people who win the raffle down to Neverwinter, where they enjoy the festivals of Shieldmeet and mingle with the people of the realm. And then they go back to the north and they live their lives, and another 4 years passes by. And so Bowden has told you that this year for Shieldmeet you will be joining him, and the you've done a lot of good work here, and despite being an outsider, and they've never really had an outsider before, and you've assimilated to their culture well, and he would like you to join him on his journey to Neverwinter for the Festival of Shieldmeet this year.
And she cracks a side smirk on her face, and she's like, "Let's go."
So, when Shieldmeet nears, you head out with uh, Bowden and the rest of your fellow bears who win the raffle, which is about 20 I would say it's about 20 bears in total. Um, you guys make your way across the tundras, passing the large crater where you fell down onto the prime material plane. Um, they all kind
And
of
it,
stop
yeah,
and let you have your moment there, you know,
yeah,
gazing
and
over the.
yeah, and she's now managed to, because the collar's loosened, regain some of her strength, and she is casting a light to keep things bright as they go.
Yeah.
And when she notices a beautiful view, she will just cast out a sacred flame in order to
Yeah, the
like
the
shower
the
berries.
bears actually have a very high endurance. They can travel much longer than many of the more fragile races, and you do spend several nights across the tundras just guiding them with your enhanced light. And
Yeah. She attempts to row and then realizes that she's weak and then feels sad about it and then just pouts and
well,
keeps
4 years
writing.
have passed, so you've probably gained a lot of physical strength back, or you still feel weak
It's
compared to your
yeah.
old self, yeah, for sure. But
She
um,
still remembers like tossing mortals like
but you
nothing,
do
and
you
now
do feel like every muscle in your arms and backs like
yeah,
move and work as you
she's physically recovered from her fall.
and you with Bowden and the rest of the bears make your way through the dangerous glacial riverways down into the warmer regions of Faerun along the Sword Coast. It's actually summertime now when you emerge. Up in the north, it's never really summer, but you come into a warm summer air once you make it through the glacial peaks. And once you get down into the harbor of Neverwinter in your two ships, um, you come into the sprawling city. You can see the uh, large keep of Lord Dagalt Neverember resting high above the edge of the docks district of the city. And as you come in with your large kind of Viking-like row ships, with many of the other different styles of ships coming in from all across the realm, it's quite a sight of sound, color, and variety. And you peer across this massive city that is so different from not only the place you just left with the bears, the snow covered tundras, but the divine home from whence you were cast.
She and then she nods, recognizing the walls, and she remembers that she's been here before,
And
but but remembers a different viewpoint, looking
absolutely,
down at
yes,
it.
one of judgment, and now this is one of it's a new look on life as a whole, really, probably. Um, all these beings are now, you are now much like them, and you
Yeah.
never really realized that before. You've actually had to live a human life, and now you recognize what all these people have to go through day in and day out.
And now she's like interested to see what it's like from the other side, and
And
so she's now welcoming the experience.
as the tips of your ship hit the stonework of the docks district of Neverwinter, and you drop your anchors and spill out of the boats into the city in preparation for shield meet. That is Hemdriel, and welcome to Curse of Strahd.
Where is Neverwinter?
Neverwinter is
Is it by the Moon Sea
I'll ping
or?
it. Yeah, I'll ping it up here, right up here.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
man,
So you guys
that's
came. Yeah, you guys came down through these kind of glacials and
oh okay. So we were up
down
there.
the down the yeah.
Okay, so
But
never.
awesome.
There we go.
That was
Yeah,
that was great.
yeah.
And
So yeah.
now I
So
got
now here. So now I have one other question for you.
sure.
How warm is this temperature currently?
Summertime in Neverwinter. Now that you guys have sailed down here, it's probably around 80 degrees.
Oh yeah, she definitely like. She would definitely wear them and get naked, and then she's like, "Oh, thank God, I don't have to wear these anymore." Oh,
Yeah, you all like everyone, all the bears, have their fur and they have like a set of scale basically or chain, and they've got like kind of you know uh
that's like the opposite.
clothing underneath it, but yeah, like you're draped in these big furs, and you've got your scale on as well, but these thick pants and big furry boots, and yeah, I mean, as
Yeah.
soon as you guys hit the heat, I'm sure you're just like stripping off clothes. Yeah.
What's ironic is they're probably doing something similar because they're like, "Oh
Yeah.
God, it's getting too hot," and she's like, "Oh, thank God, it's getting warmer."
Yeah. And I could just see her just like sprawling out and like even almost just like jumping off into the harbor, like, and just like her head pops out of the water and she's just like
Yeah,
divinity.
yeah. Behold,
Yeah, yeah.
water is awesome.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I love these like little personal solo sessions. So like for me,
Yeah,
these are
yeah,
a lot of fun. And that was great. So I
yeah,
I
yeah.
appreciate you sticking that out, and I hope that gives
Oh,
you a
that's
little
yeah.
more
That's
history, like, and ties you to the world a little bit.
wearing those clothes throughout all those years really messed with her. She's just like, ugh,
Yeah.
it's so itchy.
Nice job.